Somewhere, a young man looks slightly confused by his current situation, wondering how he ended up back in this place again. That place is Sky Island, a floating island in the sky, shrouded in smoke, with Western-style buildings that look abandoned and in ruins, as if life had completely vanished from it. But as Sora scans his surroundings, he begins to wonder if the figure he's seeing is actually human. When their eyes meet, the mysterious old man calls out to him and says he'll be waiting for Sora deep within the abyss. The moment Sora hears those words, he suddenly wakes up from his dream, mentally drained, wondering why that strange dream has come back to haunt him. While he's trying to rest, his father calls out to him. If he doesn't hurry up, they're going to be late. So, Sora begins his morning routine. Yet, he can't stop thinking about that dream. It felt like he knew the mysterious man in it. While brushing his teeth, he's startled by the sight of his father, freshly out of the shower, casually patting Sora on the head. Annoyed, Sora tells him to stop treating him like a little kid. He's already 15 years old. Seeing how irritated his son is, the father teases him even more, joking, "Aren't you impressed by my muscular body?" Sora fires back, saying he doesn't want to see it. In fact, having to see it every day is downright disgusting. Because of this, he complains that if their family didn't live in such a small apartment, he wouldn't have to see his dad naked all the time. The father laughs and replies, "Once I get rich, we'll live in a big house. You and Riku will have your own rooms." But Sora is clearly tired of hearing that. His dad's been saying the same thing for the past 5 years. He tells him to stop daydreaming and think more realistically. But his father responds that chasing dreams is part of what makes life interesting. And honestly, things have gotten easier ever since Riku joined the military. Thinking about Riku, Sora realizes it's already been 3 years since his brother enlisted. He himself is also planning to join the military after graduating from school. When that day comes, he'll be saying goodbye to this noisy life, saying goodbye to his jokester, unreliable dad, and to his strict yet loving mom. Even though Sora finds comfort in his family's presence, he's always known that this peaceful life would eventually come to an end. What he didn't expect was that its end would come alongside the end of the world, because that's when the tower suddenly appeared, reaching high into the sky. At the time, Sora didn't yet know that the tower's arrival would drastically rewrite human history. But one thing he did know was that the tower was connected to his dream. With growing concern in the family, that night Riku called home to say he was safe, but that he'd been assigned a mission by the military. Once that mission was over, he promised they'd all be together again. But despite his words, the expressions on their faces showed worry, because that night would be the last time they ever heard from Riku. Amid the chaos that felt like the end of the world, the news reported that there was no major danger as long as people stayed inside. Shortly after, news anchors reported that 20 towers had appeared across the world, and soon after that, all broadcasts stopped completely. The only updates people could get were the same repeated announcements being played over and over on the radio. Some time has passed, and an official announcement is heard, ordering everyone to evacuate to the nearest shelter. Following that order, the small family begins preparing to leave. The mother leaves behind a letter for Riku, just in case he ever returns. But on their way to the shelter, everything they see along the road seems to be sending them a grim message. Every soldier they pass wears an expression of despair as they drive by in their military vehicles. The vehicles themselves are covered in deep claw marks, and a nauseating stench seeps out from inside them. Even Sora's father can't help but wonder, what on earth is happening to the world? Eventually, they arrive at a temporary shelter, set up inside a gymnasium, already packed with other evacuees. But even with so many people around, there's hardly any interaction. It's as if everyone is quietly waiting for death. And yet, in the middle of all the silence and hopelessness, there's still someone causing trouble. A deranged man is loudly making a scene, doing everything he can to draw attention to himself. He forcefully snatches a piece of bread from a young child, accusing the boy of stealing it from him. But the hungry child denies the accusation and quickly points out that the man already ate his own bread. The crumpled bread wrapper still sticking out of the man's clothes is proof enough. But despite the clear evidence, the shameless man lashes out and kicks the child. Sora watches the scene unfold, shocked by what he's seeing. Is no one going to help this poor kid? The child, defenseless and alone, starts crying as the man continues to bully him. That's when Sora's father steps in. He approaches the man and asks why he's doing this, especially now, given the situation everyone is facing. But the man scoffs at him, clearly irritated, and tells him to mind his own business. Sora's father calmly asks the man to return the child's bread. Instead, the man throws a punch. But before it can land, Sora's father counters with a powerful kick, sending the man crashing to the floor. Without saying another word, he returns the bread to the child. The defeated man glares up at Sora's father, furious that this old geezer had the nerve to interfere. But Sora's father stares back at him coldly, his eyes sharp and unwavering. Realizing he's been beaten, the man backs off. He walks away in humiliation, but not without muttering that he'll remember this. Carrying a grudge, the thug disappears into the crowd. Sora, still watching, grows anxious about his father's safety. But his dad reassures him not to worry. He'll keep an eye on that guy. Still, as the man walks away, he shoots a hateful glare towards Sora. Their eyes meet, and fear creeps into Sora's chest. Even if he dies, he thinks, he'll never forget that man. His name is Eiji Kagawa, a scumbag who always bullied Sora and took pleasure in violence. Just as the earlier commotion was resolved, the evacuees were suddenly startled by an urgent announcement from a soldier. He ordered everyone to leave the shelter through the back exit and board the transport trucks immediately. Hearing the command, a well-dressed man questioned the soldier. Why were they being forced to leave so suddenly? The soldier simply apologized, saying that the reason was classified. Frustrated by the vague order, the man in the suit grew angry, complaining that the military always acted as they pleased. He even went as far as blaming the government, shouting, "What's the point of paying taxes if soldiers won't even give us a proper explanation?" But in the middle of the argument, everyone was silenced by a horrifying noise. The soldier, now visibly shaken, shouted again, this time telling everyone to run because they're already here. Sora, sensing that something was terribly wrong, urged his mother and father to hurry. Then, as he looked toward the main entrance, he saw the soldiers struggling to hold the doors shut, until they were suddenly shattered by a group of monstrous creatures that stormed in by force. Humanity was under attack by monsters. Sora watched in shock, trying to make sense of it all. What were these things? And why had the world changed so suddenly? Panic broke out among the evacuees, and everyone sprinted toward the transport trucks. Sora's parents had already moved ahead and managed to get to a truck. Seeing this, Sora told them to board first. He would find another one, but his father grabbed him by the arm, trying to pull Sora up with them. Unfortunately, the people already inside protested. The truck was over capacity. Hearing the objections, Sora realized he couldn't become a burden to his parents. So, without hesitation, he turned and ran off to find another truck. He passed several that were already full, but finally spotted the last one, just about to leave. As the truck began to move, Sora chased after it, struggling to climb aboard. That's when someone reached out a hand to help him up. Without thinking, Sora grabbed it and quickly thanked the person. But then, the helper smirked, revealing it was Eiji Kagawa, that same scumbag from earlier. He leaned in and said coldly, "No, I should be the one thanking you for this." And with that, Eiji let go of Sora's hand. He sneered, "Why don't you just die with your father?" Sora plummeted to the ground, fury and despair overwhelming him. Of all the people in the world who could have offered help, it had to be him. In that moment, Sora truly believed his life was over. Even with death staring him in the face, Sora couldn't accept it. He didn't want to die. He desperately wished someone, anyone, would come and save him. And then, just as he clung to that hope, a voice suddenly called out to him. When Sora looked up, he was shocked. It was the same mysterious man who had appeared in his dream. The man looked at him calmly and said, "I'll be waiting for you, at the edge of the abyss." And just like that, the man vanished into thin air. Sora snapped back to consciousness, confused. Was that a dream? But then he looked around, wondering, where am I? Before he could make sense of it, a stone axe came flying straight at him. Thankfully, it missed by inches. That's when he noticed the presence of a monster, and panic set in. Then what the hell is going on? Why am I the only one here? Is this hell? Am I already dead? And why won't this damn monster stop chasing me? Overwhelmed by all the chaos, the sudden appearance of the massive tower, that bastard who threw him off the truck, the cryptic old man in his dream, and now this relentless monster, Sora reached his breaking point. Fueled by frustration and rage, he fought back, grabbed a nearby stone, and managed to kill the creature. Breathing heavily, he collapsed to the ground, realizing, "I'm alive. I actually survived." But when he looked at the monster's corpse, something felt off. It looked like a creature straight out of a video game. There was even strange black writing on its chest. Could that be a rank? Just as he was trying to make sense of it, something even weirder happened. A small black stone emerged from the monster's chest and floated in front of him. Before he could react, the stone suddenly shot forward and struck his body. Shocked, Sora wondered, did that thing just go inside me? But when he looked at his wounds, he saw them healing at an incredible rate. Not only that, he felt stronger. Sora began to wonder, could it be that if I defeat monsters, I level up? It just like in a game? Trying to stay grounded in reality, he figured that if there were more monsters on this strange island, he needed to move cautiously and avoid getting ambushed. After exploring the island for a while, he noticed something odd. There were no more monsters and no other paths he could take. That's when he saw it. At the edge of the island, there was a floating staircase, neatly arranged in midair. Sora immediately knew this couldn't be good. With no other options, he began to descend the floating steps. In a video game, a place like this would definitely be a major monster zone. If this were just a game, falling wouldn't be a big deal. He'd just respawn. But this was different. Everything felt too real. His senses were sharp, vivid, alive. If he died here, that would be the end. After a while, Sora finally reached the end of the staircase. With cautious steps, he entered the mysterious room ahead of him. But as soon as he stepped inside, he was caught off guard. A torch lit itself, flickering to life on its own. Below it stood a stone tablet engraved with strange symbols. As Sora examined the tablet, he realized something strange. He had never seen these characters before, yet somehow he could understand them perfectly. The inscription read, "By collecting all the fragments, one is granted the right to leave the abyss." Understanding the message, Sora now knew exactly what he had to do. His goal was clear, and with that clarity came a surge of motivation. If he thought about it, the monsters he had fought so far weren't that challenging. So he believed he would survive and escape the abyss. With renewed determination, Sora stepped toward the massive stone gate before him. As it opened, he was met with a vast new area. Let's go back to the previous layers for a moment. The first layer of the abyss measured 900 square meters, and the monster Sora defeated there had a number 1 engraved on its body. The second layer was 1,800 square meters, and one of its monsters had the number 2. The third layer was 3,600 square meters, and among the 4 monsters there, one had the number 3. Fragments could only be found inside monsters with these numbers. They were the keys to reaching the next layer. The higher the number, the stronger the monster guarding the key. But what made things truly difficult wasn't just the monsters themselves, it was how to get the key. With each descent, the area of the layer would double in size, and the number of monsters would also double. But thankfully, Sora grew stronger as well, much stronger. As Sora descended deeper layer by layer, the types of monsters he encountered kept evolving. By the time he reached the 12th floor, he was already facing monsters that attacked even the safe zones. So, the moment he stepped into that lair, he was immediately ambushed by vicious beasts. But now, they were no longer a match for him. The deeper he went, the more monsters he had to face. And when he finally reached the 30th floor, the number of monsters had reached 500 million. Finding the key among them was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Some of the monsters carrying keys were protected by massive hordes, while others hid deep inside narrow caves. What made it even worse was the time it took to hunt them all down. Still, Sora pressed on, slaughtering every monster in his path. By the 42nd floor, the number of monsters had reached a staggering 2,199 billion. Looking at the sea of monsters before him, Sora let out a maniacal laugh. To him, this was perfect. His battle dragged on for so long that he completely lost track of time. But time no longer mattered. In the abyss, there was only death and carnage. And of course, it was death for the monsters, and carnage by Sora. With just a single light swing of his weapon, he could wipe out the monsters trying to surround him. After the massacre, Sora went back to his stone slab to count how many monsters he had slain. But, with all the time he had spent down there, he began to wonder, wasn't it about time he found the key? Right then, out of nowhere, the stone slab he had been using was smashed to pieces by a monster. A giant centipede-like beast had appeared. Sora grinned in excitement. Could this be the one holding the key? Even though the monster made an impressive entrance, no matter how powerful it was, it didn't matter. To Sora, they were all the same. Even monsters that thought themselves mighty. He could kill them in a single blow. But despite defeating the creature and gaining more power in the process, none of it meant anything anymore. After all, that monster was just another ordinary one. And now, Sora was beyond fed up with how much time he had spent in the abyss. In the year 2000-something, 20 mysterious towers suddenly appeared across the world. Before humanity could figure out why they had emerged, monsters poured out and nearly wiped out civilization. Countless people perished in the chaos. That day came to be known as Judgment Day. But despite the overwhelming casualties, a small number of survivors were mysteriously revived, and they gained access to a strange system. Those who awakened were granted immense power. Society was eventually rebuilt, and the awakened ones formed hunter guilds. Life slowly began to move forward again. Meanwhile, somewhere else, we see that Sora is still trapped inside the abyss. At the moment, she's chasing after a monster dog trying to get it to reveal its number. But as she gives chase, she's caught off guard by the sudden appearance of chains restraining the dog. From behind the chains, a voice rings out. Someone is using a transfer scroll. Sora is warned not to interfere, or the summoned creature will be successfully called forth. Hearing the voice, Sora becomes curious. Was that a human voice? Could this be her way out of the abyss? As the dog is being pulled up into the sky, Sora's excitement grows. There might actually be an escape route. She leaps upward, aiming for the white chains, but a warning appears before her. Abyssal summoning cannot transfer more than 2 living beings. Because of this rule, Sora's presence is rejected. But even when faced with rejection, she refuses to back down. She won't let anyone stand in her way. Determined, she pushes forward, lunging toward the white chains and the dog. At the same time, outside of City S on Earth, a woman named Yu Sonozaki is seen running for her life. But as she keeps running, she gets caught in some vines and falls. That's when she realizes she's in serious danger. A voice, someone using a vine skill, remarks how troublesome it is chasing her. That someone is Aika, the one who brought Yu down. Alongside her partner, they demand that Yu hand over the advanced transfer scroll. After all, a level 60 scroll isn't something a mere level 19 rookie should be using. That's why Choji Shido orders her to give it up, or there'll be no mercy. Hearing the threat, Yu panics. She pleads with them, saying that fights between hunters are strictly forbidden. What they're doing now is against the rules. But Shosei Toshida, a level 38 barbarian, scoffs and asks what rules she's talking about. Because around here, he's the one who makes the rules. He warns her again, hand over the scroll, and maybe she'll get to walk away in one piece. Backed into a corner, Yu tells the group of bandits that if she were in their shoes, she wouldn't push someone this far. Hearing her words, Aika realizes that the woman is trying to forcefully activate a summoning scroll, so she quickly tells her teammate to stop her. That sets Shosei off. Furious that the woman dares to defy him, he lashes out with his sword. But just as his strike is about to hit, Yu vanishes from the spot. Shosei is stunned. Did she use a teleportation circle? Now, in a different location, Yu mutters to herself. If she's going to die anyway, she might as well take them all down with her. Seeing this, Shosei realizes it really is a forced summoning. Aika starts to panic, knowing that if the summoning goes through, no one will be able to control the high-level monster that appears. If it succeeds, it'll be the end of their entire group. Choji rushes toward Yu, trying to stop the summoning, but it's too late. The ritual is complete. Yu screams that all of them will die at the hands of the monster she's about to summon. A massive bolt of lightning crashes down onto the scroll. Even Shosei, watching closely, can feel the overwhelming energy pouring from it. This doesn't look good. Then, chains of light shoot up into the sky. As the light begins to fade, the bandits finally get a clear look at the summoned creature. But to their confusion, what appears is just a Cerberus, a level 3 monster. The bandits burst out laughing. One of them even tosses a bone at the dog. Yu stares in shock. Why is it just a weak monster? But before she can make sense of it, a mysterious arm suddenly slashes through the Cerberus's body. Something has stepped out from inside the monster. The bandits are stunned. Is this the real summoned monster? Is it humanoid? Standing beside the figure, Yu cautiously asks, "Are you human?" The mysterious figure is none other than Sora, and she's ecstatic. She laughs loudly, celebrating her escape from that cursed abyss. But her laughter sends chills down the bandits' spines. They can feel something terrifying in her presence. They start whispering to each other. Who the hell is this person? Noticing the humans around her, Sora walks up to Aika and asks, "Is this Earth?" When Aika confirms it, Sora beams with joy. She's really back. She's finally back on Earth. But then she looks around at the people nearby, frowning in confusion. Wait, are you guys cosplaying or something? That comment infuriates the bandits. Choji yells at her, "Don't mock the Tiger's Roar Guild." He and Shosei immediately swing their swords at Sora, but Sora takes the blows head on, completely unfazed. He glares at his attackers with such intensity that Shosei starts to wonder, is this man the real monster? Hearing that, Sora's instincts kick in. If someone thinks she's the monster, maybe she's not fully out of the abyss yet. Maybe he's the monster in disguise. She grabs Shosei by the neck and demands, "Show me your number." Shosei struggles in her grip, confused and terrified. "What number? What are you talking about?" It's then that Sora realizes she's not facing the mindless monsters from the abyss anymore. She releases Shosei, and he immediately wets himself in fear. Looking at the four of them, Sora orders them to get lost. And without hesitation, they run. Yu, still watching from nearby, can't take her eyes off Sora. She wonders, who is this person? That kind of power, those terrifying injuries across her body. There's no way she's the monster Yu tried to summon from the abyss. But as she's lost in thought about Sora, he suddenly asks her, "How many years has it been since the tower appeared?" Yu replies that it's now the 5th year since the tower's emergence. Still trying to grasp the situation, Sora follows up with more questions. "Is this really Earth? What scroll were you talking about earlier? And why are you wearing clothes like this?" Yu explains that ever since the tower appeared, a system awakened among humans. In the 5 years since its appearance, a third of all cities have been destroyed. Even City S was hit by a major invasion from the tower. Luckily, she managed to escape from that incident. Hearing this, Sora is stunned. City S? Wasn't that his hometown? So he urgently asks how the city is now. Yu tells him that it's almost completely destroyed, but many powerful individuals have been sent there. They should be able to wipe out the remaining monsters. Sora then asks how he can get to City S from here, and the moment Yu points in the direction, he vanishes. She's left speechless by how he disappeared without waiting for her to finish talking. With Sora gone, Yu realizes that a mysterious individual has appeared out of nowhere. She has to report this to her older brother. Meanwhile, near the ruins of the city, Shosei and his team are on the move toward their main base. Shosei is still fuming over what happened with Sora, but suddenly the group is ambushed by a dark figure, the Shadow Master. Shocked, they wonder who this mysterious person is. The Shadow Master tells them he can sense him on the four of them. So, he gives them 3 seconds to say where that person is. Shosei, annoyed, asks if the guy is joking. Who does he even mean? But the 3 seconds are up. Without hesitation, the Shadow Master slashes at all 4 of them. As a result, Aika, Choji Shido, Shosei Toshida, and the unnamed teammate are all killed on the spot. Elsewhere, at Tower Front, the main base of the Tiger's Roar Guild, a servant reports to his master that the life signals of Shosei's 4-man party have vanished, and there's no trace of either Yu Sonozaki or her scroll. The master, visibly irritated, mutters that the people his servant recommended were complete garbage. They couldn't even handle a level 19 summoner. The servant, terrified, adds that all their life signals disappeared at the exact same time. That's when Rich Mukai, a level 118 storm priest, speaks up. He concludes that the four were probably killed in a single strike. Furious, Rich orders the servant to find out who's responsible. Also, track down Yu Sonozaki and get answers out of her. He won't tolerate this any further. Anyone who dares to lay a hand on his people will die. While gazing out the window, Rich suddenly notices a figure dart past him. He instantly senses the overwhelming stench of blood coming from them. It's strong, unnaturally so. Curious, he watches where the figure is headed. To his surprise, it's moving toward a destroyed zone. This invasion feels different from anything before. Rich senses that someone powerful, someone major, is about to get involved. And that can only mean one thing. The tower, which had lain dormant for 5 years, is finally beginning to move. With that realization, Rich immediately contacts the scouting team, ordering them to pull back, because what's coming now is a state of emergency. Back to Sora's point of view. After moving at incredible speed, he finally arrives at the ruins of City S. As he takes in his surroundings, he's struck with disbelief. In just 5 years, his birthplace has become a living hell. While he had been thrown into the abyss, once a weak boy, he had grown stronger through countless life-or-death battles. His senses had become so dulled that he nearly lost all humanity, almost becoming a beast himself. But thoughts of his family kept him grounded. They reminded him of who he was. Now, after all that struggle, the monsters he once feared are nothing more than a swarm of tiny ants to him. So, upon returning to Earth, Sora holds on to one hope, that his small family somehow made it out alive. City S, once bustling and full of life, is now nothing more than a pile of rubble. Its buildings crumbled as if struck by a massive earthquake. Yet strangely, there are no signs of recent monster attacks. And since the city was supposed to be evacuated, there shouldn't be anyone left here. Sora enters a nearby apartment building. He walks into one of the rooms and softly says, "I'm home." Just as he expected, no one is waiting for him. But he didn't come here to meet someone. He came because of all the memories tied to this place. As he looks around, something catches his eye. A piece of paper lying on the table. When he picks it up, he realizes it's a letter from his mother. In it, she writes, even though everyone said Sora was gone, as a mother, she refused to believe it. That's why she arranged everything in the room exactly as it was, just like his old bedroom. She truly believed he would come back someday. Reading those heartfelt words, Sora is deeply moved. His parents had risked their lives just to leave behind this message. And not just the letter, they'd neatly folded clean clothes in his closet and even left behind a map showing the way to Shelter 6. At the end of the letter, his parents asked Sora to make a promise, to come find them, because they've been waiting for him with all their love. As Sora looks at a family photo, tears begin to fall. He starts to wonder, just how strong is he now? If he's strong enough to end this disaster, maybe, just maybe, he can make up for the years he lost. With that, Sora sets his sights on Shelter 6, where his parents are. According to the map, it's located to the east, but the roads leading there are completely destroyed. Still, Sora can't afford to waste time. Even if the path is gone, he'll just create one himself. With determination in his eyes, he leaps high into the air, cutting through hordes of monsters and bounding from building to building. Elsewhere, while Sora is speeding through the city, 2 hunters are seen lounging around. One of them suddenly asks, "Did you hear that loud noise just now?" The other shrugs it off, saying he's probably just too drunk and hearing things. As they continue chatting, something blasts past them at lightning speed. Hunter B, startled, asks what just flew by, but Hunter A admits, "I didn't even see it." Just then, Hunter C arrives, asking if they saw it too. He says he actually captured it on camera. When the others check the footage, they're left stunned. Wait, was that a human? Not far from there, a terrified woman is cornered. She begs the men surrounding her for forgiveness, saying she only came to this place to find food. But the 3 men, clearly predators, are grinning with excitement. They hadn't seen a woman this beautiful in a long, long time. The leader of the group then said to the woman that his team was actually a kind group. They would take good care of her, he claimed. But despite his words, the woman could clearly sense that these 3 men were anything but trustworthy. So she pleaded with them to let her go. The group's leader, named Eiji, told her not to be afraid. He said he would treat her gently. It would be a shame, he added, if his group couldn't enjoy the beauty she possessed, so he would be the first to have her. As Eiji began to force himself on her, a voice suddenly interrupted. "Some things never change, huh?" It was Sora. He had arrived. He called Eiji trash. Annoyed by the intrusion, Eiji glared at him and said he shouldn't expect to leave alive after interrupting like this. Furious, Eiji ordered his men to take Sora down. The 2 thugs rushed at him, weapons drawn, but Sora quickly slapped one of them with such force that he was knocked aside. The other one got a knee straight to the face. In an instant, both of them were taken out. Seeing this, Eiji grew even more furious. He shouted, "Do you even know who you're messing with?" He was a proud member of the Tiger's Roar Guild, and warned that if Sora laid a hand on him, the entire guild would come after him. But Sora stepped forward, revealing his face, and calmly asked Eiji, "Have you already forgotten the face of the person you killed?" Eiji froze. He looked at Sora in disbelief. Could it really be Sora Mukujima. No, that was impossible. Panicking, Eiji tried to make a run for it, but Sora quickly moved to block his path. Eiji barked at him to stand down and demanded, "How are you even alive?" Sora said nothing. He just reached out and grabbed Eiji by the throat, then said coldly, "Because of you, I had to crawl through the depths of hell." And so, this moment was Sora's long-awaited revenge. With all the power he had gained, he was overflowing with killing intent. Throughout his school years, Sora had been relentlessly bullied by Eiji, but today, he was finally going to settle that score. Yet, as he recalled all the torment he had endured, Sora realized something. If he killed Eiji, he'd only be continuing a cycle of hatred with no end. So, instead, Sora let him go. He refused to be consumed by vengeance. He wouldn't become someone who took pleasure in bullying others, but still, if trash like Eiji were allowed to live freely, there was no doubt he'd cause even more suffering. So Sora told him, "You tried to kill me, and failed. I won't kill you either, but that doesn't mean I'll just let you walk away." Which meant, Eiji would still pay the price. For 2 years of school torment, he'd take one hit. For terrorizing the weak, one more hit. And for pushing Sora off with the intent to kill, he'd take 2 more hits. That made 4 strikes in total, a debt that had to be repaid. Hearing this, Eiji began to beg for mercy. He pleaded with Sora. If he was hit now, in his current state, he might die from the first blow. But Sora replied calmly, "Don't worry, I'll be gentle." Then came the first punch, brutal and unforgiving. Then the second, then the third. Eiji, now collapsed and silent, was told to get up, but he didn't move. Instead, he looked up weakly and whispered, "Just kill me." But Sora answered with his foot, a crushing kick to the head. That was the 4th and final hit, leaving Eiji unconscious on the ground. From his condition, Sora could tell, both of Eiji's arms and legs were broken, his eyes completely blinded. A lifetime of suffering was exactly what he deserved. With that, Sora turned to Eiji's 2 underlings and ordered them, "Take him to the hospital, and make sure he never shows his face in front of me again." With the threat delivered, Sora continued on toward his next destination. The cleanup was done. Now, he could focus on what mattered most, reuniting with his family. In the buffer zone of City S, several soldiers were seen guarding the area, casually chatting about their duties. One of them mentioned he preferred guard duty, while his comrade replied that this place was actually more relaxing, since their unit didn't have to worry about fighting monsters. But hearing that, the platoon lieutenant scolded the soldier, saying he shouldn't act like a coward, especially if a monster appeared. He better not panic and fall off the wall. That's why First Lieutenant Tanji Kagura reminded his soldiers not to be weak, as they never knew when monsters might show up. Listening to the lieutenant, Private First Class Shoki Matsura respectfully responded, saying this place was a buffer zone and monsters from Area X rarely showed up. As long as they stayed alert, everything should be fine. However, right after he said that, a soldier's head was suddenly blown off by a monster attack. With the monster's sudden appearance, panic spread among the soldiers. The lieutenant quickly ordered everyone to calm down and form ranks. A level 45 child of Kraken had appeared, and the soldiers began firing a storm of bullets at it. But instead of injuring the monster, they only made it angrier. The troops were helpless. Against a high-level monster, their weapons had no effect. While the soldiers were panicking over their ineffective attacks, Lieutenant Tanji, observing the monster, suddenly warned them of an incoming strike. He ordered them to scatter immediately. The monster then lunged forward and instantly killed a nearby soldier. Watching their comrade die before their eyes, the rest of the unit was furious. One of them charged in with a bomb, determined to take the monster down at close range. As he approached, the monster, still under heavy fire, locked eyes on him, then launched one of its tentacles. The soldier braced for death, but what happened next shocked him. Why did the monster suddenly stop its attack? The creature retracted its tentacle and seemed to shield itself, as if afraid of something. All its tentacles now moved defensively, protecting its body. The soldiers were confused. Was the monster afraid? Even though they didn't understand its behavior, they knew this was their chance. The soldier carrying the bomb immediately threw it. A massive explosion erupted where the monster stood. The troops anxiously watched the smoke, wondering if they'd finally killed it. But as the dust settled, the Kraken was still alive, and now it stared straight at the soldiers who threw the bomb. Faced with that terrifying reality, the soldier collapsed in fear, overwhelmed by the hopelessness of the situation. The Kraken shot a tentacle straight toward him, ready to kill, but just before it could strike, something crashed down on the monster. In an instant, the Kraken was crushed effortlessly. The soldier who had nearly died stared in disbelief at the scene, his eyes locked on the monster that had just been stomped down. Lieutenant Tanji also stared, shocked by the figure that had appeared before them. Was this man the reason the monster was so terrified? As it turned out, this marked the arrival of Sora. Seeing Sora's arrival, Lieutenant Tanji was filled with disbelief. Had this man really killed a monster that was immune to explosions? With a single punch? The sheer destructive power he displayed had to be at least S rank, something extremely rare. But since Lieutenant Tanji had never seen this man before, he knew he had to find out who he was. So he activated the inspect skill on Sora. However, the moment he used it, Tanji was completely stunned by the notification that popped up. The system warned him to show respect to the target. Instead of gaining any information, the skill backfired. Lieutenant Tanji suddenly collapsed unconscious on the spot. The nearby soldiers, shocked by what they saw, quickly called for the medics to check on him. Meanwhile, Sora, who had been watching the soldiers, was a bit confused about what just happened. Not wanting to get involved, he casually called over one of the soldiers and asked how far Shelter 6 was from here. Shoki Matsura responded, saying it was about 50 kilometers north, but to get there, he'd have to pass through Area X. Since Sora wasn't familiar with the area, he asked what was so special about it. Shoki explained that Area X was where soldiers tried to contain the monster waves, redirecting the monsters there to minimize collateral damage from the battles. Many hunters fought monsters in that area. While Sora and Shoki were talking, they suddenly heard loud excitement from the other soldiers. They were in awe of the rare drop the monster had left behind. Watching the commotion, Sora was surprised to realize that defeating monsters in the real world could yield item drops. It felt just like a video game. Still curious, Sora asked Shoki how strong the Kraken was considered among their unit. Shoki explained that a level 45 monster was already a serious threat. Realizing how weak the soldiers were compared to that level, Sora couldn't help but be a little surprised. So he asked again, during a monster wave, how many monsters above level 45 typically appear? Shoki replied that usually there were no more than 100, because if that kind of monster appeared in large numbers every time, humanity would have been wiped out long ago. Now that Sora understood the situation, he thanked Shoki Matsura and said he would be heading off. Watching Sora leave, Shoki got the feeling that this young man might actually be a savior. Driven by that hope, he selfishly made a request. Even though it sounded unreasonable, he begged Sora to go to Area X. With a hunter as strong as him, Shoki believed many lives could be saved. Hearing the request, Sora asked whether the fastest route to Shelter 6 was through Area X. When Shoki confirmed it was, Sora accepted the request. Shoki was stunned. Was Sora really serious about going there? Sora simply replied that he would take that path, and while passing through Area X, he'd take down any monster unlucky enough to cross his path. Sometime later, at the military camp behind the front lines, Lieutenant Tanji finally regained consciousness. Curious about how much time had passed, he asked the soldier guarding him. Shoki Matsura, who was at his side, replied that the lieutenant had been unconscious for about 10 minutes. Thanks to a healing item dropped by the monster, they were able to revive him almost immediately. Hearing that, Lieutenant Tanji quickly asked about the man who saved their squad. Shoki explained that he had headed north. Surprised, Tanji asked if Shoki was serious. Shoki confirmed, saying the young man was going to Shelter 6. Upon hearing the destination, Tanji asked again, was he going through Area X? Shoki nodded, explaining that the young man didn't seem to care, and went on without hesitation. Worried, Lieutenant Tanji asked Shoki to contact Central Command. He was concerned for the man who had saved them, especially since there were only about 10 minutes left until the scheduled operation began. If they notified Command now, they might be able to save him. Shoki, carrying out the request, informed Tanji that he had already contacted Central Command using the emergency radio. But he couldn't help wondering, why did it have to be now? Lieutenant Tanji explained that today's operation was different from all the others. The details were highly classified, which is why regular soldiers hadn't been briefed. Area X had been designated as the central base of operations, and because it was the main zone for holding back monsters, Central Command had decided to turn it into a bombing zone. At Central Command, many operators were actively monitoring the surrounding areas. Then suddenly, one of them informed the commanding officer of an incoming emergency call. Hearing this, Commander Renji Kumagaya, a level 58 flame mage, ordered the operator to connect the line. Once connected, Lieutenant Tanji Kagura began reporting that an unknown hunter was moving directly into the bombing zone, completely unaware of the operation. Commander Renji was visibly annoyed. "Did you seriously use the emergency line for that?" he asked coldly. Lieutenant Tanji explained that he only wanted the bombing schedule slightly adjusted, especially because the hunter heading there was extremely powerful. They couldn't just let someone like that die needlessly. Renji replied, "Is this hunter truly powerful? What level is he?" Tanji hesitated. "I don't know." That answer pushed Renji's patience. "So, you're telling me," he said sternly, "that you used an emergency channel for an unknown level hunter who broke protocol and wandered into a bombing zone?" Even Renji's assistant chimed in, suggesting the man was likely already dead before this report even reached them. Renji then burst out laughing. "Even if you don't have a brain to think, you've certainly got the talent to entertain," he mocked. Turning to the officer next to him, Renji continued, "It seems the soldiers there still haven't been properly trained to think independently. Of course, it's not my place to discipline your subordinates, but if I report to HQ that one of your men interfered with the operation, you might be held accountable." Across from him, Mie Tonosaki, the Western commander, gave Renji a cold, piercing glare, but Renji simply thought she was a fool. As for Tanji Kagura, the soldier he had carefully trained, Renji was disappointed. The man was now trying to save a stranger and ignore a crucial military operation. Still, part of him wondered, just how strong was this person Tanji spoke of? Commander Mie, who had been listening in silence, finally spoke up. She calmly told Lieutenant Tanji that she believed he had no intention of disrupting the operation. But if he couldn't provide a convincing reason, she, as commander, would personally see to it that he was brought before a military tribunal. After that statement, Mi turned to Commander Renji and asked, "Well, are you satisfied now?" Renji was clearly irritated by the question, but trying to maintain professionalism, he told Lieutenant Tanji to give a convincing reason. Now that he had the floor, Tanji began explaining. The young man had killed a level 45 child of Kraken with a single blow. Commander Mi was visibly shocked. Didn't that mean the man was stronger than an A-rank hunter? She asked, could he be an S-rank hunter from the military? But Renji dismissed the idea, saying that wasn't possible. All S-rank personnel had been reassigned elsewhere to ensure the success of the mission. Still unconvinced, Commander Mie asked why Tanji didn't know the man's level. "Don't you have a skill that lets you inspect people's information?" Tanji replied that he had indeed used the skill, but was unable to see the level, and worse, after using it, he passed out from overinformation. At the very least, he estimated the man was level 100. Commander Renji was clearly taken aback, but even so, this was a classified operation, and rare power wasn't enough reason to stop it. As Renji voiced his stance, Commander Nobuo Yuasa from the east agreed. He said that the military couldn't afford to abandon an operation over such an uncertain factor. Currently, thousands of troops from 4 Corps were participating in the mission. There were more than enough forces to surround both the bombing zone and the buffer zone. The original plan was this. After the bombing, monsters would scatter from Area X, and troops stationed at the garrison would intercept them. But if an emergency broadcast was made, the monsters would react to the sound, and all charge toward a single point. If that happened, the area would fall in an instant, and tens of thousands of soldiers would die. Saving one person, at the cost of tens of thousands of lives, even if that person was an S-rank hunter, it was a risk the military could never take. So, they had no choice but to reject the request. Even me, Tanji's direct superior, said she couldn't support his plea. The military couldn't throw away the efforts of so many people just to save one life. This decision was final and agreed upon by the top commanders. And with that, the connection was cut. Tanji's unit stood there in helpless silence. Standing next to him, Shoki Matsura spoke gently, "Lieutenant, you did everything you could. Even if we failed, what matters now is the bigger picture, the bombing operation." Just then, Shoki's eyes fell on the car keys hanging from Tanji's belt. Without hesitation, he snatched them. Tanji immediately noticed and called after him, warning that the bombing was about to begin. But Shoki replied, "There are still 6 minutes left. That's enough time. I'm going." As he walked away, Tanji shouted after him, "Are you trying to get yourself court-martialed? Turn back while you still can." But Shoki ignored the threat and drove off, heading straight toward Area X. One of the soldiers turned to Tanji and asked, "Should we go after him and bring him back?" But Tanji shook his head. "There's no need. Shoki Matsura made his decision, and I believe he knows exactly what he's getting into." Meanwhile, Shoki sped toward Area X, determined to warn Sora about the bombing. At that moment, even Shoki himself had no idea that the man he was trying to save would become humanity's last hope. Sometime later, Shoki Matsura, who was almost at Area X, grew frustrated. He still hadn't found the person he was looking for. He wondered where that person could have gone. The route he had taken was the fastest way to get there. If he still couldn't find them, did that mean they were moving faster than his car? Knowing he was almost at Area X, he considered whether he should use the loudspeaker to call out. If he did, the man would definitely hear him, but it would also attract the monsters. Still, with only a little time left before the bombing began, Shoki decided to ignore his fear. He grabbed the loudspeaker and steeled himself. As a soldier who had already brought shame upon himself, he didn't want to cause trouble for anyone else. So, Shoki shouted into the loudspeaker, saying he was the soldier Sora had saved before. He warned Sora that the area was about to be bombed and told him to leave immediately. In the middle of Area X, Sora was busy clearing out monsters when he heard Shoki's announcement. When Shoki mentioned the bombing, Sora finally understood why there were no hunters around. Everyone had already been warned. Even though the monsters posed no threat to him, Sora didn't know if he could withstand the intense heat of an explosion. There was no point in taking unnecessary risks. He also realized that the soldier had risked his life just to warn him. Sora always repaid his debts, so there was no way he could let the soldier die here. Meanwhile, Shoki wondered if Sora had heard him. As he scanned the area, monsters began moving toward him. Panic set in. He needed to get out fast. But just as he was about to hit the gas, he remembered his rescuer was still inside Area X. At that moment, a monster suddenly appeared in front of him. Startled, he heard a knock on his car window, only to see Sora standing there. Relieved to see that Sora was still alive, Shoki felt a weight lift from his chest. But Sora then asked him what he meant by bombing. Realizing what time it was, Shoki glanced at the clock in his car. They were out of time. At exactly 5 p.m., several planes flew over Area X and unleashed a barrage of bombs and rockets. The area was thrown into chaos. Sora slammed his foot into the ground, raising a stone fortress to shield himself from the blast. At the Central Command headquarters, an operator reported to the commander that the bombing was complete. Hearing this, Renji Kumagaya ordered the operator to pull up drone footage. He wanted to see how many monsters had been killed and where the survivors had gone. But the operator reported that the drone detected no signs of life. Renji was shocked and asked where the monsters had fled to. The operator replied that they were still inside the bombing zone, and even those in the center of the blast zone were completely unharmed. Renji was stunned. There was no way the monsters could have survived that. Mie Tonosaki, standing beside him, asked the operator about the ground drones. The operator switched to the ground drone feed, and everyone in the control room froze in shock. They wondered if the monsters had some kind of shield, something that could protect them from the bombing. But then they noticed someone standing on the shoulder of a massive monster. Was that a human? Before they could get a better look, the figure turned toward the drone, and in an instant, the drone was attacked. The feed went black. With the drone destroyed, the operator told Commander Renji they had lost all contact. Mie was stunned by what she had just seen. They had said this wave of attacks would be different. But what was really going on? Could the monsters know the military was spying on them with drones? Meanwhile, inside his car in Area X, Shoki wondered if the bombing had ended. Seeing that he was still alive and unharmed, he felt deeply grateful. He'd been given another chance at life. But just as Shoki was celebrating, Sora told him it was far too early to rejoice, because if he had survived, then the monsters could have survived as well. And right now, they were heading straight toward him. At the same time, Sora's attention shifted to something approaching. Realizing what it was, he quickly pushed Shoki down. A high-speed object shot past them. Shoki immediately recognized it. Wasn't that a military drone? Did that mean the monsters had attacked it? This was the first time something like this had ever happened. But Sora told him to put his curiosity aside for now. They had to prepare for a swarm of monsters. When Shoki saw them, his eyes widened in disbelief. These monsters were all above level 50, clearly part of the elite ranks in this monster wave operation. And their leader was level 90. Seeing them completely unharmed, Shoki felt a wave of helplessness. Was this the end for human civilization? He thought for sure he was going to die right there. But Sora reassured him. They weren't going to get hurt. If bombs couldn't kill the monsters, then they would just have to be beaten to death. He told Shoki to stay hidden inside the car, then charge straight into the horde, wiping out the lesser monsters with ease. As he continued cutting them down, the boss monster attacked, but Sora blocked the blow without breaking a sweat. He even managed to disarm the creature, seizing its weapon. With the weapon disabled, Sora leapt high toward the boss, and as the giant looked up, Sora readied a devastating strike. His punch landed squarely on the monster's head, smashing it clean off. But even without a head, the monster remained standing. Standing atop its massive body, Sora's gaze shifted to someone watching silently from a distance. He was shocked. He hadn't sensed this person's presence at all until now. When the true Shadow Master laid eyes on Sora, he smiled with satisfaction. Finally, he had found him. The seed of the abyss. As the giant monster's head regenerated, both it and the Shadow Master fixed their piercing gazes on Sora. The giant called him a thief, demanding he return what rightfully belonged to him. Sora had no idea what he was talking about, but the Shadow Master declared that Sora had to pay for his crimes by giving up his life. Because Sora had stolen someone else's power, the only repayment was death. With that, the Shadow Master unleashed a magical attack. Dozens of dark spears shot toward him, but Sora was completely unaffected. He even caught one of the spears midair, telling the Shadow Master that if this was all he had, then he'd never be able to kill him. Just as Sora pointed the spear back at him, the giant monster launched an attack of its own. At that moment, a drone flew overhead, capturing the scene. The Shadow Master scowled. Was Odin Raven spying on him? But on closer inspection, he realized it was nothing more than a man-made imitation. On the other side of the battlefield, Sora gripped the giant monster's hand tightly and told the Shadow Master that if he truly intended to kill him, he'd better fight seriously. But when Sora aimed his spear at the Shadow Master, his strike only pierced the giant monster's body instead, leaving Sora puzzled. Could the Shadow Master really vanish that quickly? Meanwhile, the Shadow Master, who had swiftly shifted through his own shadow, muttered in disgust about being watched by those vile humans. Seeing their low-grade imitation only deepened his hatred, and he ordered a flying monster to destroy the drone. Once the drones were destroyed, he commanded the monsters to wipe out every scout in the area. Elsewhere, inside a building, a soldier controlling one of those drones was seething with frustration. That mysterious figure had destroyed his drone, but at least he had completed his mission. He had captured footage proving that the monsters had changed their attack route because of the man standing there, a young hunter fighting the monster wave alone. Now that he had the recording, he needed to report the situation to the highest commander. But before he could leave, a monster suddenly appeared and attacked him. His location had been discovered. Surrounded, the soldier was killed by the monsters. Hearing his dying screams, the Shadow Master laughed in delight. With his loyal slaves at his command, he ordered them to slaughter those disgusting humans. Meanwhile, Sora glared at him, recalling Shoki's earlier warning about an imminent danger. If he let the Shadow Master act freely, countless people would be at risk. To defeat the army, he would first have to take down its leader. If he wanted to save as many lives as possible, he needed to kill his enemy quickly. Sora prepared to face the Shadow Master head-on, but just as he was about to move, the giant monster launched an attack, forcing him to dodge. Watching the monster's movements, Sora realized its power had increased after merging with the mysterious man. But before he could focus on the giant, the Shadow Master suddenly emerged from the shadows behind him. "You're really persistent," Sora remarked. But as he looked closer, shock washed over him. Did this mysterious figure look like him? While Sora was still caught off guard, the Shadow Master conjured a massive sword in his right hand. Sora could feel the sheer power radiating from it. If that blade landed a hit, the damage to his body would be severe. The Shadow Master raised his sword and declared that he would kill the Seed of the Abyss. But as the strike came down, Sora easily dodged and countered immediately, smashing his fist into the Shadow Master's arm and breaking it. Seizing the moment, he stole the enemy's Shadow Blade and prepared to strike back. But his attack only shattered the floor tiles, as his opponent had already slipped away again. Irritated, Sora scanned the area. This foe was a nuisance, but the energy he radiated was unmistakable. It was just like the power of the Abyss. From his new position, the Shadow Master glared at Sora in disdain and mocked him for only being able to steal other people's weapons. Then, his power began to fade away. When Sora saw the Shadow Blade disappear, he recognized it as the power of the Abyss. It seemed there were still many uses for that power he hadn't yet discovered, and since this battle was likely to drag on, Sora needed to secure the battlefield first. That meant getting Shoki to safety. Sora approached him and asked if he was okay with heights, and when Shoki answered, Sora immediately lifted the entire car, planning to fly him to a safe location. Watching this, the Shadow Master scoffed, calling Sora a fool. The power of the Abyss should never be wasted on something so trivial. It wasn't meant to protect the weak, but to make its wielder the strongest. With that, the Shadow Master used his Darkness Eye technique to destroy Sora, deciding it was better for him to die alongside that weak human. Sora noticed the attack was incredibly fast. If he ignored it, it would keep chasing him, so he decided to destroy it head-on. Gathering his strength, Sora threw a powerful punch at the incoming strike. Yet, when it landed, there was no effect at all. As the shadowy aura faded, Sora realized the true core of the attack was still high in the sky. While he focused on it, a sudden shout made him snap his attention to Shoki's car, where shadow tentacles had wrapped tightly around it. Sora immediately shouted for Shoki to get out, but inside the car, Shoki panicked as the shadow tentacles pierced through the entire vehicle. Furious, Sora realized the damn Shadow Master had distracted him. Moving toward the car, the Shadow Master mockingly asked if Sora was getting angry, saying there was no need to be so dramatic. Then, standing beside the wrecked car, he revealed Shoki, still alive, and even smiling at him. Using his necromancy control technique, the Shadow Master laughed, asking Sora if watching someone he cared about die right in front of him wasn't truly beautiful. Hearing this, Sora glared at him, reminded of a painful moment from his past. He asked if the Shadow Master also enjoyed trampling on other people's pride, but the Shadow Master just laughed, saying Sora shouldn't bother asking something that was already obvious. Then the Shadow Master unleashed his Obsidian Storm, an unending rain of obsidian shards hurling towards Sora. Standing his ground, Sora calmly said he understood. As the relentless storm continued, Sora began readying a devastating punch. Trash like this had pushed him too far. His blow smashed through the shadow spikes, clearing them instantly. With the path open, Sora caught Shoki, but to his shock, Shoki had already transformed into a twisted, corrupted creature. Shoki immediately attacked, throwing punches at Sora. Looking at him, Sora could only apologize in his heart. Because of him, Shoki had been dragged to his death. And for that, Sora would take his revenge by defeating the Shadow Master. But when Sora threw his punch, it passed right through, failing to land a hit. The Shadow Master scoffed, telling him it was pointless. A rookie who couldn't even control the power of the Abyss had no hope of defeating him. Yet, in the middle of his arrogance, the Shadow Master was suddenly struck hard across the cheek. The blow sent him flying back, blood splattering across Sora's arm, and Sora told him flatly that he had no right to speak so boastfully. As the Shadow Master was knocked away, a massive monster immediately moved to shield him. The Shadow Master himself was stunned. Had Sora really landed a hit on him? But before he could process it, Sora was already standing right in front of him. Sora told him that humans could grow stronger quickly, and with that, he prepared to strike again. Realizing things were turning against him, the Shadow Master instantly leapt onto the back of the giant monster. But Sora's relentless pursuit only frustrated him more. Could Sora really be learning to control the Abyss just by watching his movements? Sora ignored his words entirely, and in the next moment, he was already behind the Shadow Master, ready to land another punch. Seeing Sora so close, the Shadow Master quickly bolted, now realizing Sora was far tougher than he had expected. But as he retreated, Sora taunted him, saying he might be able to escape, but wondered if that giant monster could do the same. With a single punch, Sora's strike split the colossal beast clean in half. The devastating blow tore its body apart, but even then, the monster began regenerating. Facing it, Sora couldn't help but think how utterly annoying this ability was. Since his attacks weren't making much of a difference, he decided to go straight for its true core. As dark energy swirled around them, Sora forcibly ripped it out. The monster was in disbelief. Such a thing should have been impossible. But in the end, Sora succeeded, pulling out its core completely. The creature's true body ignited, burning to ash until nothing remained. With the beast defeated, Sora's sharp gaze locked onto the Shadow Master, his next target. The Shadow Master glared back, seething with rage, vowing to remember everything that had happened here. Gathering an overwhelming surge of shadow energy, he merged it with the power of his remaining monsters. The darkness surrounding him grew thick and suffocating. Sensing the fluctuation in power, Sora braced himself. But then, to his shock, the dark energy suddenly vanished. The Shadow Master's presence disappeared entirely. Sora was left wondering, had the Shadow Master really unleashed all the power just to run away? Now that his enemy had vanished, Sora finally turned his attention to himself. His clothes were completely torn to shreds. Fortunately, the small family photo he carried was still perfectly intact. Thinking about his own family reminded him of Shoki. Sora was certain that Shoki too had loved ones waiting for him. With that in mind, Sora took Shoki's soldier ID tag. He gave Shoki a proper burial, vowing to deliver the ID to the right person someday. The battle was over, but Sora knew this wasn't the end of the Shadow Master's terror. That man had absorbed an immense amount of shadow energy. He could strike again at any moment, especially with words meant to pierce the heart. Sora wouldn't allow it. He would make sure the Shadow Master never reached the shelters first. Without wasting a second, he took off running from the area. Sometime later, in Area X, Commander Mi arrived with her troops. She ordered them to sweep the entire zone thoroughly, leaving no trace of evidence behind. As the investigation progressed, Mi scouted every corner herself. A nearby soldier reported that all monsters in the vicinity had already been eliminated, and from atop a pile of rubble, Mi could see it for herself. The once powerful monsters now lay dead. The scene was unexplainable. She ordered her troops to check the drone footage and report their findings. Staring at the battlefield, she could only stand in stunned silence. Signs of a fierce battle were everywhere. She wondered, had the powerful hunter Tanji Kagura mentioned actually survived the bombardment? And more unbelievably, could that person have wiped out every single disaster-class monster here? Her thoughts were interrupted when a soldier reported that the recovered drone's memory was still intact and ready to be played. The soldier loaded the footage and handed the visual display to Mi. In the recording, she spotted Shoki, first-class soldier, and beside him, the hunter Tanji had spoken about. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the investigation team, one soldier was visibly shocked at what he had found. The drop item from the massive monster was still perfectly intact. As he examined it, someone watching him from behind asked what he had found. The soldier panicked, quickly claiming he hadn't found anything. But the blonde-haired soldier who had seen everything leapt toward him, asking if that was the drop from the boss monster. It looked like a rare item. He reminded him that keeping loot for oneself was a crime. Surely the soldier knew he was doing something wrong. The accused man froze. He knew full well the punishment for such an offense. Desperate, he asked the blonde what he wanted. The blonde smirked, telling him to relax. He only wanted the golden box. But the soldier refused, saying a box like that was bound to contain a legendary item. At that, the blonde grabbed his shoulder, telling him not to misunderstand. Did he really think he had a choice? Under that threat, the soldier reluctantly handed over the golden box before leaving. The blonde, on the other hand, was ecstatic. He had finally gotten his hands on the golem relic. After some time, Sora finally arrived at evacuation shelter number 6. Observing the place, he realized that it hadn't been attacked yet. So, he started walking toward the entrance. But as he got closer, he immediately became the center of attention, because he was the only one not wearing any clothes. Ignoring the stares, Sora tried to sense the presence of the Shadow Master, yet he couldn't feel him anywhere. In fact, he couldn't sense any strong individuals at all. If there was no one powerful protecting this shelter, sooner or later, it would be destroyed. While he was deep in thought, someone suddenly blocked his path. Sora looked at the man, wondering, was he blind? But the mysterious man said he could smell the thick scent of blood on Sora. He asked if Sora was an outsider. Sora calmly confirmed it and asked what business he had with that. The man then nodded in understanding, assuming Sora must be part of a relief unit sent to the shelter. He pulled out some money and explained that he meant no harm. He simply wanted to buy information about the outside world from Your Excellency. If Sora could provide him with what he wanted, it would mean a lot. Seeing the money, Sora wondered if this was the currency being used here. Still, he agreed. If it was something he knew, he would gladly share it. But first, Sora had a question of his own. Aren't you a fake monk? I mean, what kind of monk calls a stranger Your Excellency? The so-called monk laughed, admitting that Sora was sharp. His robes, he explained, were nothing more than a personal hobby. But Sora pressed further. And aren't you hiding your eyes as well? The monk stiffened, suddenly uneasy. He muttered that he had recently developed an eye disease. Of course, Sora could see through his excuse. Even with his eyes covered, the man's piercing gaze was undeniable. Clearly, he had a reason for sealing away his power. A wolf in sheep's clothing was hiding inside this shelter. Once his curiosity was satisfied, Sora let the monk ask his question. The monk wanted to know what was happening outside, since the soldiers on the walls seemed to be preparing for war. The public, he believed, had no idea. But he himself had heard explosions beyond the walls. That was why he wanted the truth from Sora. Sora simply shrugged. He wasn't too sure either. While making his way to Shelter 6, he had heard an explosion from the southwest. Frightened, he had run through rough terrain until his clothes were torn to pieces. Hence why he was half naked now. The monk was shocked by the response, but he could tell Sora was hiding his true strength. Still, since Sora had given him useful information, he thanked him and paid him for it before heading off in the indicated direction. Watching him leave, Sora wondered, was the monk really going alone? If people like him existed here, how many more fighters of that caliber could be hiding inside this shelter? And with soldiers allowing suspicious people like him to roam freely, Sora couldn't help but question whether humanity's defenses were starting to crumble under a common enemy. But instead of dwelling on it, Sora moved on toward his real destination. Sometime later, Sora managed to get himself new clothes, purchased with the money given to him by the monk. Now that he finally looked presentable, it was time to start searching for his parents' home. With the photo he had kept safe, Sora decided to go about it the old-fashioned way. He approached a woman and asked if she knew the people in the picture. But the moment she laid eyes on it, her face filled with fear. She quickly insisted that she knew nothing and hurried away from him. Sora frowned. Her reaction was as if she had just seen a ghost. Was everyone in this place going to react the same way? At that moment, a thug happened to pass nearby. Sora figured he might as well ask him instead. But before Sora could say anything, the thug called out to him rudely. Sora glared back sharply and asked if there was a problem. The thug, startled for a moment, said that Sora clearly wasn't from around here. On top of that, he was scaring people with that photo he carried. Did Sora really think this was some kind of ancient era? In response, Sora held up the photo and asked if the thug recognized the two people in it. The thug's eyes widened in shock. How on earth did Sora have that picture? Sora pressed further, asking if he knew them. Realizing that Sora was seriously looking for that family, the thug asked sternly why. Sora calmly replied, "Because I'm their son." The thug blinked in disbelief. He compared Sora to the child in the photo. Was this guy really that kid? Unconvinced, demanding if this was some kind of prank. How dare he claim to be their child? But before he could strike Sora, a truck suddenly spun out of control and came barreling toward them. Sora stood still, blocking the vehicle with his bare body. The thug was utterly stunned. Meanwhile, Sora turned to him apologetically, saying he hadn't heard him clearly just now. Could he repeat what he said? Now, trembling with fear, the thug stammered that Sora really was that child. It had been so many years since they last saw each other. And since Sora wanted to meet the people in the photo, the thug pointed him in the right direction, straight ahead, then turn left, and he'd find their house. Sora thanked him, while the thug nervously told him to be careful. Yet, the moment he turned away, the thug broke into a run. Something dangerous was about to unfold, and he needed to gather everyone quickly. Following the directions, Sora couldn't help but feel curious. Why would a random thug know where his parents lived? But then he remembered, his father, Sakuya, was always kind to everyone he met. And his mother was the same. Good people liked them. Living in a world like this would only end up being taken advantage of. But now that he was back, Sora swore to protect them and make things right. Before long, he arrived at a house with a wide yard. Could this really be where his parents lived? Given how many people had disappeared, there were probably plenty of empty homes, so he wasn't certain. Still, without hesitation, he knocked on the gate. From inside, a voice asked if he had finished his work yet. Sora instantly recognized it. It was his father's voice. Sakuya came out to greet who he thought was someone else, but when his eyes landed on Sora, he froze in shock. Sora introduced himself, but Sakuya could only stare, unable to process what he was hearing. At last, he brought Sora inside to the family room. In the family room, Sakuya and Sora sat in silence, neither saying a word. Then, Sora's mother entered, carrying a tray of tea. She asked if the two of them hadn't spoken yet. Sakuya replied that he was still struggling to believe it. The person sitting in front of him looked completely different from the Sora he once knew. Because of that, Sakuya said he needed something first. Hearing this, Sora asked, "What is it you need, father?" Sakuya explained that it was a secret exchange between father and son, something only they would know. After all, he didn't want to embarrass himself in front of his wife. But if Sora failed to answer, he wouldn't let him go so easily. At that moment, Sakuya sent out a telepathic message. If the man before him said anything suspicious, someone would immediately take action. The assassin who had been hiding all this time received the signal and remained on high alert. But Sora had already sensed his presence. He could feel the assassin's vigilance. In a way, it was reassuring. His family's home was under strict protection. Still, Sora was determined to overwhelm his father completely. He hoped the assassin was listening carefully because he was about to hear things no outsider should ever know. Sora then said, "Every week, father sneaks off to attend cooking classes with the housewives' support group." Sakuya's eyes widened in shock. How could this stranger possibly know that? The assassin, too, was baffled. Could his fierce boss really cook? But Sora wasn't done. And sometimes, he even sneaks away to take ballet lessons. The assassin's jaw dropped in disbelief. That terrifying man? Ballet? The image was impossible to imagine. When he tried picturing it, Sakuya shot him a sharp glare, making him freeze in place. Realizing that such humiliating secrets had been exposed, Sakuya admitted, "Even if that may be true, that's not the kind of thing just anyone should know. I'm still not convinced you're my son." Sora calmly replied, "Then should I tell you a true family secret instead?" Sakuya's eyes narrowed with interest. Could this really be his son? Sora continued. Don't be too shocked, but that Japanese sword you've been displaying, it's just a replica. The assassin was taken aback. A replica? But Sakuya began to panic. He demanded proof. Sora had better not be speaking recklessly. In response, Sora walked over to the sword. There's a bite mark on the handle. My older brother left it there. The assassin watching from above went rigid with disbelief. That mark, wasn't it made when his master was tied up and forced to use the sword to cut down 38 men who surrounded him? He was certain this was nonsense. Sora must be trying to trick his master into lowering his guard. But when Sora drew the sword and pressed the blade with his hand, it slid out like a mere toy. Sakuya shouted in shock. Then, without hesitation, he rushed forward and embraced Sora tightly. All this time, he had believed his son was dead. Now, realizing that the boy before him truly was his child, tears of joy streamed down his face. His little Sora had returned. Through his sobs, Sakuya confessed, "If only you knew what our family has been through. We searched every corner of this world just to find you. And before I knew it, I had become a boss. Yet here I am, crying like a fool before the son I thought I'd lost. How pathetic is that?" At last, Sakuya turned to Sora and asked if he could bring down the person hiding above. Meanwhile, the assassin who had been secretly watching was completely stunned. The boss he had always known, the man who walked beneath storms of blood, was now crying with joy. It was the first time he had ever seen such a sight, and in that moment, the assassin realized he was in deep trouble. No matter what, the assassin knew he had to escape. But just as he prepared to flee, someone grabbed his leg. Sora burst through the ceiling, telling him not to run. "Father has something he wants to discuss with you." And just like that, the assassin was dragged into a family conversation. Sakuya looked at him coldly. "Once you leave this room, you'd better stay silent. If word of this spreads, you'll bear the consequences." Faced with the combined pressure of father and son, the assassin quickly swore he wouldn't say a word. Just from their expressions alone, there was no doubt these two really were father and son. But then, Sora's mother gently stepped in, asking the two not to threaten him so harshly. The assassin was moved. His lady was truly kind-hearted. Still, even with her warm smile, she warned him that he must not utter a single word of what he'd seen. And so, he pledged obedience. With the tension easing, Sakuya chuckled to his wife, saying it was a blessing that Sora hadn't exposed any more of his embarrassing secrets. Amid the warm exchange, Sora felt as though he had just crawled out of the abyss, only to be embraced by the warmth of family. But before he could savor it, the moment was shattered. The thug from earlier barged in, panicked, reporting to his boss that a white-haired boy was looking for him. Hearing this, Sora calmly asked, "This white-haired boy you mentioned, was it me?" The thug froze. It was him! Now surrounded by his men, the thug nervously said that even if Sora was strong, their group had numbers on their side. Then he asked if Sora intended to harm their boss, or if he was part of Tiger's Roar. But when Sora glanced at him, the thug's legs trembled, and he instinctively clutched at them for support. At that point, Sora turned to his father. "Father, would you mind introducing me to your subordinates?" Sakuya nodded. "This white-haired boy is my son, the son who vanished 5 years ago. Now, he has finally returned." Then he hesitated. As for his level, his words trailed off in panic. The truth was, he had no idea what Sora's level was. Sora broke the silence himself. "I don't have a system." The revelation stunned everyone in the room. One of the thugs blurted out in disbelief. "You survived 5 years in the Fallen Zones? Without a system? Impossible. Without one, no matter how hard you train, you can't surpass level 10. You'd be no different from an ordinary human." Another thug, clearly irritated, scoffed that this so-called outsider was just a systemless rookie. But the leader quickly reminded him of what they had witnessed. Sora had stopped a speeding truck with his bare body. If he really was just a rookie, how could that be possible? Sora then asked coldly, "Do you want to see my level through the system?" But the thug fell silent, unsure. Sora explained, "Because I don't have a system. I don't even know my own basic information. With a system, you can see a monster's level, sure, but seeing another person's stats isn't that simple. Only those with the inspect skill can do it." Sakuya confirmed it. "An inspect is a rare skill. Not many hunters have it." At that, one of the thugs revealed, "But Boss has that skill." Hearing that, Sora turned to his father. "Then use it on me. Check my level." Deep down, he hoped this might even reveal some hidden truth about the abyss itself. Soon, Sakuya and his men gathered to inspect Sora's information. Meanwhile, standing beside his mother, Sora asked gently, "Mother, aren't you curious too?" But she simply smiled and shook her head. "Number past, I only want to be here by your side. From the very beginning, I already knew you would come back." Her words left the gathered men shaken to their core. And then came Sakuya's result. "No matter how many times I try, the outcome is always the same. I can't see any of his information at all." There were only 2 possibilities. Either Sora truly didn't have a system, or his level was so overwhelmingly high that it couldn't be measured. Even without a system, they could still see his name. But for someone who had survived alone for 5 years, if he had been just a beginner, he would have died long ago. which meant, most likely, Sora's level far exceeded what the system could perceive. With that in mind, Sakuya asked his son what exactly he had been doing during those 5 years. Before Sora could answer, his mother gently intervened. "Does it really matter? Shouldn't we just be happy? Sora is strong. Whatever he went through, it must have been unimaginable. But what's important is that he came back to us." Her words stirred emotions within Sora. Memories of his endless struggle in the abyss resurfaced, and tears welled up in his eyes. He told his mother softly, "But now, everything's fine. I'm here. So, please, don't cry anymore." Seeing this, Sakuya quickly dismissed his men, knowing this was a moment for mother and son alone. After all these years, they had finally been reunited. Sakuya then stepped away with his subordinates, asking them if there was any news about Jiro and his group. It had already been over 2 hours, and they still hadn't returned. Back with Sora, he asked his mother about his older brother. Could something have happened to him? But she reassured him. "Riku is fine. He just doesn't come home often because of his duties in the military." Now that Sora had returned, she asked if he wanted to reach out to his brother. After all, Riku had been fighting on the front lines relentlessly, as if trying to avenge Sora all this time. Hearing this, Sora thought back to his brother. It had been so long since they last saw each other, but shifting the subject, he asked his mother if she held a high position here. She explained that she did hold some authority, but the real reason people trusted her was because she was a cleric, a healer capable of powerful restoration, support magic, and even prophecy. Upon learning this, Sora asked her if she could see what had happened to him, but she shook her head. "My gift doesn't allow me to see someone's skills." Curious, Sora asked why she had been so warm and certain about his return from the very beginning. She smiled. "Because a cleric can foresee certain things, and I saw that you would come back one day." Meanwhile, at their main gate, the guard was startled to see a man approach with a serious expression. By chance, Sakuya was also there and rushed to greet him enthusiastically. The newcomer was none other than Jiro Iwashima, the vice president of the United Guild. But Jiro's cold, stern expression put Sakuya on edge. He asked why Jiro looked so grim. Did something happen? Sakuya had sent Jiro's team to investigate an area. Had they found something? Jiro replied bluntly. "It's just as you suspected. Tiger's Roar is working with the military." He explained that during their inspection, his team had delivered monster corpses to the army as usual. But the man recording the inspection kept nitpicking, claiming that the monsters were too damaged to verify. Because of that, they were only given half the points. Yet, when Jiro investigated, he discovered that the full points had been reported, and all the extra credits had gone straight to Tiger's Roar. Hearing Jiro's report, Sakuya thought carefully. If Tiger's Roar, a guild that was supposed to be neutral, could pull something like this, then the problem was far more serious than it seemed. That's why he declared that the United Guild couldn't just sit back and let themselves be trampled on. The city's future was at stake. Since Jiro had just returned, Sakuya told him to eat and rest first. After that, he himself would head to Tiger's Roar's headquarters and settle everything. He had to make it clear. The United Guild was not a force to be underestimated. As Sakuya said this, Sora, who was still with his mother, overheard everything. Thanks to the Black Shard, all of his abilities had grown tremendously. Not just his strength, but his senses as well. He could now hear voices from far away. From what he gathered, Tiger's Roar seemed to be connected to Kagawa and the bandits from before. And now, was his father really planning to negotiate with them? The thought worried Sora. Unable to hold back, he opened the door and told his father that he wanted to go with him. One of the thugs witnessing this thought, it might be the perfect chance to finally see Sora's true strength. Meanwhile, Jiro raised an eyebrow, clearly curious. "Who is this boy?" he asked. Sakuya then introduced him. "This is my son, Sora, the one who disappeared in the Fallen Zone 5 years ago. Now, he's finally returned." Jiro's interest grew sharper. "Then, what level is he at?" Sakuya froze, unable to answer. He had no idea what his son's level was. Before the silence grew heavier, Sora spoke up himself. "I don't have a system." The room went silent. Everyone stared in shock. Jiro frowned. "No system? Then, are you just an ordinary human? Without one, you wouldn't survive more than 3 days out there, unless you had elite stats and incredible survival skills. But even then, without job skills, you'd fall easily in battle." Still, Jiro admitted it was good news that Sora had returned alive. "Since you've only just come back, you must be exhausted. You should rest and take it easy." Sakuya agreed, insisting Sora stay at home with his mother. She immediately supported the idea, saying she hadn't even had the chance to properly show him around the house yet. Listening to them, Sora realized they all thought he was useless in combat. But he couldn't really blame them. To people with systems, he looked no different from an ordinary human. The truth was, Sora himself didn't fully understand the situation inside the shelter yet. If the monsters he imagined truly existed here, he would need to hide his true strength, for his parents' sake. The last thing he wanted was to drag them into danger. So, he decided to follow their advice and stay behind. The thug watching him, however, was disappointed. He had lost his chance to witness Sora's real power. Meanwhile, Sakuya left with his men for Tiger's Roar. Watching them go, Sora's mother told him not to worry too much. His father was only being protective. After all, they had just been reunited. It was only natural that he wouldn't want his son in danger again so soon. She assured him everything would be fine. His father was strong, and with her visions of the future, she knew her husband would return safely. As she gently stroked his head, Sora muttered that he wasn't a little kid anymore. But even if his mother said not to worry, and even if her prophecies reassured her, Sora couldn't shake the thought. With Tiger's Roar having direct ties to the military, his father would inevitably clash with them, again and again from now on. So he asked his mother about the situation in this shelter. "Why is Tiger's Roar causing problems with us?" his mother explained. Since the Day of Judgment, a hunter guild formed by the Awakened had joined forces with the military to manage evacuation shelters. Later, his father created the United Guild and worked alongside the military here, all while continuing his search for Sora. The United Guild grew rapidly, fueled by the people's respect and admiration for his father's vow to find his missing family. From there, the United Guild took charge of maintaining order, gathering supplies out in the field, and dealing with monsters. Meanwhile, the military handled violations and attacks from the tower. Sakuya, being a man of integrity, never wanted his own people to suffer from those violations, and that was how the United Guild had managed to keep the peace for the past 4 years. But a few months ago, Tiger's Roar, a massive hunter guild from the 4th Evacuation Shelter, arrived to establish a branch here. From that moment on, the conflicts never stopped. Hearing this explanation, Sora asked his mother why the military didn't step in. She replied that as enemies grew stronger, the army could no longer hold them back. Tiger's Roar had been founded specifically to clear towers, and their strength was overwhelming, so much so that the soldiers had no choice but to rely on them. The information gained from conquering towers was simply too valuable for the military to ignore. What's more, Tiger's Roar had been chosen by the tower gods, and those chosen, known as Ezra, were the guild's true trump cards. This made Sora curious. "Tower gods? What are they?" His mother explained. "They are the rulers of the towers. Their power is practically divine compared to humans. Anyone who passes the trials of the gods becomes an Ezra, blessed with divine power." Outside the towers, Ezra were seen as messengers of the gods. Inside, they served as guardians of the tower walls. And as for Tiger's Roar, they currently had the most Ezra of any guild. Each one possessed absurd strength, and with that advantage, Tiger's Roar devoured every neighboring guild in no time at all. By contrast, the United Guild, founded by Sora's father, was loved by the local people, but they had never cleared a single tower. That made them the only guild left still standing without an Ezra. From his mother's story, Sora realized just how dire the situation really was. Still, he asked her one more thing. If people admire United Guild so much, then why do they act like thugs? His mother was slightly taken aback before replying. "That's just your perspective." She chuckled softly and added, "But does it matter? What's important is that everyone can still live with happiness." She then led Sora to one of the rooms and told him to relax. "You must be tired. Get some rest early and take the chance to wash up. If you'd like me to scrub your back, just call for me." Sora quickly refused, saying he could handle it himself. Smiling, his mother left him alone in the room. Once alone, Sora sharpened his senses. With his mother gone, it was time to take action. Even if he didn't fully understand how dangerous his father's situation was, he couldn't shake his worry for him. So he slipped out of his room. His mother, who happened to glance back through the window, saw him leaving. With a soft sigh, she muttered, "Children, always so stubborn." We now shift to Sora's father, Sakuya. He is on his way to the Tiger's Roar Guild, together with members of the United Guild. Meanwhile, Sora steps out of the house, looking around at a city that feels unfamiliar to him. But with its dark, pitch-black center, it was easy for him to spot his father. Using his sharp vision, Sora managed to locate his father's group. However, just as he was watching them, he suddenly felt dizzy. This was strange. Ever since he absorbed the Abyss Fragment, he had never felt chills like this before. While questioning it, he suddenly heard the voice of the Shadow Master, declaring that he would never let him escape. Hearing that voice, Sora wondered if the figure was hiding nearby. But no matter how hard he tried to sense it, he couldn't feel anything. Since he could hear the threat so clearly, it meant that bastard must be lurking somewhere around Shelter 6. While Sora was still annoyed, the dizziness struck him again. Once more, the Shadow Master's voice echoed. He said that Sora would never escape, for his soul had already been marked. As those words fell, the Shadow Master's head suddenly appeared right beside him. Sora tried to grab him, but his hand went straight through the Shadow Master's body. The shadowy figure repeated that his soul was marked. No matter where he ran, it would always know. Hearing this, Sora wondered if that illusion was some kind of soul marker. But before he could think further, the guards below the building shined their flashlights at him, asking what he was doing out so late at night. Only then did Sora realize he had been yelling too loudly and had drawn their attention. With no other choice, he leapt away from the scene. As he moved through the streets, he wondered if the Shadow Master's illusion had finally vanished. But the moment he landed, part of the shadowy figure reappeared on his body. That made Sora curious. Did the figure vanish because of the light? To test it, he stepped under a street lamp. Sure enough, he began to understand the nature of the soul marker. If he stayed in the darkness for more than 7 seconds, the soul mark would activate and trigger dizziness. and if he lost focus, the Shadow Master's words would even change. What's worse, he was the only one who could see that terrifying face. Whenever he stood under the light, a piercing ringing echoed in his head, until the mark finally disappeared and the vision faded. This made Sora realize something. Perhaps the reason he hadn't experienced the soul marker earlier was because his house was always lit by sunlight or lamps. That must have been why he hadn't noticed it before. But now that the Shadow Master was haunting him, it was likely his location was already being tracked from afar. That thing could strike at any moment, meaning Sora couldn't afford to let his guard down. Still, before dealing with that noisy Shadow Master lingering at his side, he had to find his father first. Annoyed by this ghost-like haunting, Sora pressed on. Just as his mother had warned that the military saw no use for the United Guild, his father could be in danger. Even though he didn't know how many strong fighters were inside the shelter, there was no way the military and Tiger's Roar Guild would just sit back quietly. There was a high chance they were planning to crush the United Guild. And if it came to that, Sora swore he would protect his mother and father, even if he had to kill every last one of them. As these thoughts weighed on him, he couldn't help but wonder, could his family ever return to those peaceful days they once knew? As Sora continued walking, he finally came across a large crowd, realizing he had reached his destination. He grew curious about how his father would handle the negotiations. After all, when Sora was a child, his father always told him that violence should only ever be the last resort. So, was his father still waiting until the very last moment even now? But while Sora was wondering about this, the thugs who followed his father were eager to see what their boss would do. It had been a long time since their boss had last drawn his sword. The last time he used it, he left a scar 20 meters long on his opponent. At that moment, Sakuya began drawing his sword, shouting angrily at Tsuchida to come out and face him directly. With that, Sakuya slashed toward the Tiger's Roar Guild building. The sheer force of the strike left a massive gash on the building. Seeing their boss unleash his power filled the United Guild members with joy and excitement. Sora, however, was utterly shocked. What his father did was nothing like the teachings he remembered. Watching the slash, Sora standing at the back turned to someone nearby and asked, "Is the boss always like this?" The thug gave him a puzzled look and replied, asking if he really didn't know. The boss was infamous for his hot temper. He would pick a fight with anyone he disliked. Hearing that left Sora stunned. He asked again, "But didn't the boss always say that violence should be the last option?" The thug explained further. At first, yeah, that's what he always said. Back then, he still believed the military would set things right. But too many things have happened since. For the military, as long as hunters do their jobs and civilians aren't starving to death, they don't care about some brawls breaking out. They won't bother stepping in for every small fight. That's why settling things with your fists is the fastest way. If you can win a fight, there's no need to talk. But if you can't win, then talking is completely useless. So basically, beat them down first and then talk later. Hearing this explanation made Sora start to think. From what he'd seen of the monk, wasn't it true that strong people usually avoided unnecessary conflict? Could he have misunderstood all along? Did having great power really mean you could rampage however you liked? Or was the monk just turning a blind eye for some reason? The monk in question was Yukio Shuzenji, an Arhat class with level 75. At that moment, he had arrived in the southwest, specifically in Area X. With his keen eye ability activated, he could clearly observe the corpse of a slain monster. It was a level 90 boss, torn apart without any signs of burns from heavy weaponry or the like. Its death was proof that many powerful figures were still out there, enough to make Yukio tread carefully. After tying his headband over his eyes, Yukio returned to his monk class at level 45. Meanwhile, back at Sakuya's group, Tsuchida, the representative of the Tiger's Roar Guild, emerged with his men. Enraged, he shouted at Sakuya, asking if he thought things were still the same as when the evacuation shelter was first built. He demanded that Sakuya surrender the United Guild. Sakuya, hearing this, retorted that things had indeed changed, and it was all because of annoying bastards like Tsuchida showing up out of nowhere. He even said he should have killed him when he first arrived yesterday. Hearing the threat, Tsuchida sneered and asked why Sakuya didn't just do it now. Was he scared? Sakuya shot back. Is that what you want? There was no way he could just ignore such provocation. Seeing Tsuchida's boldness, Sakuya once again began to draw his sword. Meanwhile, Tsuchida began to feel uneasy. He was waiting for someone to arrive. Hadn't he provoked Sakuya enough already? Or maybe his provocation wasn't strong enough, since the person he was expecting still hadn't appeared. Smirking, Tsuchida taunted Sakuya again. He sneered that Sakuya didn't even dare to draw his sword. So it was true, the leader of the United Guild was nothing but a coward. With such cowardice, the United Guild was better off serving as fuel for Tiger's Roar. Hearing this mockery, Sakuya's anger flared. He immediately lunged forward, swinging his sword, while Tsuchida raised his shield to block the strike. Seeing that Sakuya had taken the bait, both Tsuchida and his men were pleased. From behind, a voice suddenly ordered them to stop. The one who spoke was none other than Osamu Usui, an inspector from the military. Watching Sakuya's actions, Osamu coldly remarked that it seemed the United Guild had the audacity to start a fight within the shelter. The thugs immediately grew irritated at Osamu's presence. Why is that guy here? Is he siding with Tiger's Roar? They muttered. Sora, watching from the sidelines, was also suspicious. Was Osamu truly a soldier supporting Tiger's Roar? Or was this just a coincidence? But the moment Sora spread his aura, he sensed countless soldiers lying in wait inside the building. That could only mean one thing. The military had planned this from the very beginning. Sakuya narrowed his eyes at Osamu. Could this man be the mastermind behind everything? Osamu then declared, "According to Article 15 of the Temporary Shelter Security Act, dueling within the shelter is strictly prohibited. Offenders can be sentenced to 15 days or more in prison, depending on the severity of the offense, or even face execution." With that, he asked if Sakuya intended to obey military orders. Hearing those words, Sakuya finally realized it was all part of Tiger's Roar's dirty scheme. By provoking him, they were forcing him to break the law, ensuring his arrest. Especially Osamu, that corrupt bastard of a soldier. Sakuya clenched his fists. He couldn't believe Osamu dared to arrest him so openly. Once he was thrown in prison, his sentence would surely be extended. Or worse, he could simply be made to disappear in a staged accident. If that happened, the United Guild would be crushed by Tiger's Roar and the others without resistance. Still, Sakuya couldn't help but wonder. Why was the military disrupting the balance like this? Could it be a struggle for power within their ranks? Even without knowing exactly what those bastards were after, Sakuya resolved that he could never admit to a crime he hadn't committed. Not if the survival of the United Guild depended on it. So he told Osamu, "It seems the military has misunderstood. I wasn't fighting Tsuchida. There was no duel. As the founder of the United Guild, I cannot admit to wrongdoing without proof." But Osamu smirked. "The proof is already clear. That slash mark your sword left behind is evidence enough." Sakuya frowned. "You must be joking. That mark is no proof of a fight. It's simply proof that I was renovating the building." Osamu chuckled coldly. "It seems the boss of the United Guild still doesn't understand. The decision of what counts as evidence lies with the military. If I say it's proof of a fight, then it is proof. From the moment you set foot here, you had already lost. Now, follow the military quietly." Seeing the soldiers surround him, Sakuya was naturally surprised. He told his men not to bow down to injustice. If their enemies had prepared this trap, then the United Guild should be ready to face it head-on. But at the same time, he ordered them to hold back for now. With Osamu within his reach, the military wouldn't be able to fire freely. Osamu, watching Sakuya, smiled with satisfaction. His plan was working perfectly. Sakuya, on the other hand, was carefully weighing his options. Taking down a swift opponent like a level 63 assassin would not be easy. Still, if he could manage to capture Tsuchida, then the United Guild might have a chance to get out of this situation. With that thought, Sakuya prepared to draw his sword once again. Seeing this, both Osamu and Tsuchida realized Sakuya was about to make his move. Tsuchida quickly activated his skill. With his defensive ability, he could completely block sword strikes. If Sakuya attacked recklessly, his blade would surely shatter. Meanwhile, Osamu taunted, asking whether Sakuya wanted to be taken quietly, or thrown into a cell along with his men. He should choose wisely. Jiro, standing nearby, shouted for his boss not to give in. Hearing that, Sakuya extended his sword forward. The action shocked Jiro. Osamu smirked, mocking Sakuya, saying he had finally made a wise decision. Watching their boss seemingly surrender, the guild members grew frustrated. Some asked if he was really going to let things end this way. Others reasoned that maybe the boss was only doing this to protect them. But Jiro understood what Sakuya truly meant. By handing over his sword like that, he was signaling Jiro to get ready. Realizing his boss was about to strike, Jiro prepared for a combined attack. As Sakuya stood before Osamu, his sword suddenly vanished from his hands. Tsuchida's eyes widened in shock. But before he could react, Sakuya lunged straight at him. Tsuchida scoffed, mocking him. No matter how hard Sakuya attacked, he could never pierce through his shield. But just as Sakuya prepared to strike, Jiro activated his technique from behind. Stones surged forward, coating Sakuya's weapon. With the blade transformed, Sakuya swung down, smashing through Tsuchida's shield with overwhelming blunt force. The unexpected maneuver left Tsuchida stunned. That strike wasn't a slash at all. It was a devastating blunt attack. As he stumbled and fell, Sakuya moved in to capture him. But Osamu immediately saw through Sakuya's true intention. He readied his blade to stab Sakuya, warning him that if he retaliated, he would be executed on the spot. Seeing Osamu move, Jiro rushed in to help his boss. With his stone magic, he blocked Osamu's attack just in time, while Sakuya continued reaching for Tsuchida, who scrambled backward. The soldiers raised their rifles, preparing to fire, but Jiro quickly activated another technique, raising a stone barricade to shield his boss. With Tsuchida trapped, Sakuya felt a surge of relief. If he could restrain Tsuchida, his group could safely retreat. But just as he was about to grab him, Tsuchida suddenly vanished into thin air. Sakuya froze in disbelief. Osamu mocked him, explaining that Jiro's stone prison had only given him the perfect opportunity to use shadow trance through the shadows. That's how he secured Tsuchida first. Now that Sakuya had lost his hostage, he was completely defeated. Osamu immediately ordered his troops to annihilate the United Guild. His command stunned not only Sakuya and Jiro, but also the surrounding soldiers. Confused by their shocked expressions, Osamu demanded to know why. At that very moment, a hand gripped Osamu's shoulder. It was Sora, standing right behind him. Both Osamu and Tsuchida were stunned in disbelief. Sora looked at the two of them and asked coldly, "Why do you both look so surprised?" Hearing those words, Osamu couldn't help but wonder, who was this person behind him? Could it be an ally Sakuya had secretly called in? More importantly, how could anyone sneak up behind an assassin so easily? Since he didn't know who Sora was, he immediately assumed this stranger must be an enemy, and because the first to strike would surely win, Osamu had no choice but to use his trump card. Osamu quickly pulled out an item. The moment he revealed it, Tsuchida was shocked. Wasn't that the deadly poison vial belonging to Tiger's Roar, the one prepared to take down even a level 90 boss? Since when had this bastard soldier stolen it? Without hesitation, Osamu broke free from Sora's grip, uncorked the bottle, and unleashed the poison. At the same time, he slashed a dagger toward Sora. Watching this unfold, Sakuya's face filled with worry. Tsuchida, on the other hand, was furious at Osamu. By spreading such poison, he would kill everyone in the area. Sure enough, as the deadly fumes spread, soldiers nearby collapsed instantly. Even though Tsuchida hated this outcome, he was certain of one thing: the ally Sakuya had brought must already be dead. But just as he was about to escape, both he and Osamu were grabbed and restrained once more. Tsuchida was stunned. How could this man still be standing? That poison was strong enough to kill even a level 90 boss. With their plan completely shattered, both Osamu and Tsuchida realized the one holding them was no ordinary human. He was a monster. Sora, clutching them both tightly, asked coldly, "Where do you think you're going?" Tsuchida panicked, more in awe than fear. What shocked him most was Sora's body, completely immune to the poison. Every player, regardless of class, had 5 core stats: intelligence, perception, strength, agility, and constitution. For someone to withstand such a lethal toxin, his constitution had to be on par with a level 100 player. Staring at the two men, Sora ordered Osamu to command his soldiers to surrender, but Osamu ignored him. Instead, he used his martial arts skills to counter and lock Sora's movements. No matter how strong this boy was, he couldn't possibly handle a seasoned veteran. As Osamu pinned him, Tsuchida noticed an opening. If Sora struggled to break free, Tsuchida could land a finishing blow with his skill, but Sora sensed it. With sheer force, he hurled them both away, slamming them into the stone wall Jiro had created earlier. The impact was devastating. Both Osamu and Tsuchida lost consciousness instantly. Just as Sora turned to look at them, Osamu's body suddenly began to fade. Sora froze in shock. Osamu had already reappeared behind him. Brimming with confidence, Osamu prepared to stab Sora. He was certain that, no matter how strong Sora was, there was no way he could react to his shadow trance. Moving swiftly, Osamu thrust his dagger forward, but to his horror, the blade failed to pierce Sora's body. His skin was too strong. Panicking, Osamu tried to pull the dagger out, but it was stuck fast. Sora clenched his fist and swung at him. Osamu dodged and retreated quickly, while Sora calmly pulled the dagger out of his own body. Even though Osamu avoided the direct hit, he was still battered by the sheer force of Sora's blow. The shockwave alone left him injured. Realizing this opponent was far beyond his league, Osamu decided he had to escape immediately. But before he could move, Sora appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye. Without saying a word, he grabbed Osamu's head and slammed it into the ground with brutal force. In that brief but decisive fight, Osamu was completely knocked out cold. On the other side, Sakuya's men, the street thugs who followed him, fell completely silent. None of them had expected Sora to be this powerful, and after effortlessly defeating that corrupt military officer, Sora casually dragged him along as if he weighed nothing. The soldiers nearby also stood frozen, powerless. Having just watched their captain be taken down so easily, none of them dared to face Sora. With no resistance coming from the soldiers, Sora turned to the thugs and told them to take care of the rest. Then, looking at his father, he urged him to return home. A short while later, at the Mukajima residence, Sora, Jiro, and Sakuya had already made it back. Sora's mother asked Sakuya if everything had been resolved. He replied that the situation had been handled. Hearing that, Jiro asked if the enemy had revealed anything. Sakuya shook his head, saying they were stubborn. Still, at least now they knew about Tiger's Roar's scheme, and he warned Jiro to remain alert in the coming days. Shifting the topic away from Tiger's Roar, Sakuya then asked Sora what he had been doing over the past 5 years. Sora explained that after learning about the conflict with the United Guild, he remembered how, 5 years ago, he had fallen into a strange realm. There, all he did was fight, slaughtering endless monsters. It felt as though that place was one of the towers. Trapped inside, he was forced to keep descending deeper and deeper. That was why he never stopped battling countless monsters. Sora then told his family everything that had happened. Eventually, he managed to escape that place thanks to a summoner who brought him back to Earth. After hearing this, Sakuya told him that 16 towers had already been identified, yet none matched the description Sora had given. Sora replied that if that strange realm was indeed a tower, then it must be an unregistered one. Hearing that, Jiro suggested to Sakuya that if the tower was near Shelter 6, the United Guild should make clearing it a top priority. After their discussion, Sakuya told Sora how grateful he was that he survived. Jiro, however, laughed out loud. Survived? What do you mean by that? Right now, Sora's way stronger than all of us combined. If anything, this is something worth celebrating. Even Sora's mother smiled, saying the most important thing was simply that Sora had returned home. With him back, their family could finally be whole again. Sakuya agreed wholeheartedly. He would never let the Mukujima family be torn apart again. Feeling his parents' warmth, Sora realized that their fears mirrored his own. Having finally reunited with them, he vowed never to leave them again. With the strength he now possessed, he would protect his family no matter what. But just as he was thinking that, the room's lights suddenly went out. At once, Sora felt a wave of dizziness hit him. Sakuya wondered aloud if it was a sudden blackout. Jiro replied that the weather forecast had predicted heavy rain and thunderstorms tonight. Yet even with Jiro's explanation, Sakuya grew suspicious. Why hadn't there been any thunder yet? Meanwhile, Sora immediately sensed the danger. This was bad. With the lights out, the Shadow Master reappeared behind him, whispering that the seed of the abyss would never escape again. When the blackout struck, Sora was stunned. He knew that whenever darkness approached, the Shadow Master would return. But this time, as he saw its presence, he couldn't help but notice. The words it spoke were different from before. Even though both his parents were ability users, neither of them could see it. At the same time, the Shadow Master latched onto Sora and suddenly gained full awareness. Then, just like that, it vanished from his body. Sora blinked in surprise. Had it left? But in truth, the Shadow Master's consciousness had fully awakened. It spoke to Sora, saying it had been a long time since they last met. Shocked, Sora wondered if the Shadow Master had really returned. Yet, it seemed formless, without a physical body. He convinced himself it must be an illusion, and if it was just an illusion, there was no need to confront it now. But when Sora dismissed it, the Shadow Master asked if he was simply pretending not to hear, if he really thought this was just an illusion. Ordinary people, it mocked, always deceive themselves. Then, without warning, the Shadow Master invaded his body. At once, Sora's vision went dark. He realized with alarm that this was no illusion. As it possessed him, Sakuya, his mother, and Jiro were all shocked. They could feel waves of dark energy pouring out of him. Even Sakuya asked, "What's happening to your eyes?" Panicked, Sora's mother quickly cast Purify on him, but nothing happened. He wasn't cursed. That only made them more confused about what was happening to their son. Meanwhile, trapped within the possession, Sora wondered, did this mean the Shadow Master before him had taken on a physical form? If so, then his family was in danger. Acting on instinct, Sora reached out and clutched the Shadow Master's throat. Seeing this, his mother, Sakuya, and Jiro were shocked. Was there an enemy there? But no matter how hard they looked, they couldn't see anything. The Shadow Master, gripped tightly, only sneered at Sora, mocking him for being afraid. Frustrated, Sora demanded to know why the Shadow Master kept chasing him. Was it because he thought Sora was a coward? The Shadow Master scoffed at his words. Then, almost as if remembering, it said it hadn't even introduced itself yet. It revealed its name. It was Osa of the noble deity race, the god of darkness, Fodel. The reason it pursued Sora was because he had absorbed the Black Crystal, a fragment of Osa's divine power left behind in the abyss. That crystal carried Fodel's very essence of darkness. Fodel warned Sora that the god's agents were already watching him. By leaving the abyss on his own, Sora had drawn their attention, and many agents were beginning to gather. If he didn't want to die, he had no choice but to return to the tower with Fodel. Hearing this, Sora couldn't help but wonder, were these gods' agents the same Ezra his mother once told him about? But even so, he didn't care. With defiance, Sora declared that even if the gods themselves came for him, he would crush them. What could a few Ezras possibly do to him? Fodel growled in irritation, warning him not to be so arrogant. Everything Sora had overcome so far was nothing more than luck. The Ezra were far beyond his current strength. In fact, Fodel boasted he could destroy Sora himself without even breaking a sweat. But Sora shot back, demanding, "And why should I believe you?" Fodel only laughed in delight, amused that Sora truly didn't believe him. "Then you'll regret it," he said coldly. "When the rain of blood pours down upon this land, you'll understand." Though Sora didn't trust him, a thought gnawed at the back of his mind. What if Fodel was telling the truth? That would be a problem he couldn't ignore, because no matter how strong he was, he couldn't save everyone. As Sora gripped Fodel tightly, a sudden surge of power wrapped around the god of darkness, binding him in place. At that moment, Sora's vision returned, something that clearly frustrated Fodel. But just then, a voice cut through the darkness, saying that he believed in Sora. Seeing who it was, Sakuya immediately welcomed him. Sora, however, was stunned. Wasn't this the monk from the shelter entrance? Sora turned to his father and asked if he knew him. Sakuya replied that he didn't just know him. He and Shuzenji had founded the United Guild together from the very beginning. Fodel, bound in place, seethed with anger at Shuzenji, furious that he was once again interfering. Watching this, Sora asked Shuzenji if he could actually see the Shadow Master. Shuzenji replied that the two of them needed to talk, especially since the situation had become extremely urgent. Even Sakuya pressed him, demanding to know what was going on. Shuzenji assured him he would explain once he was done speaking with Sora. Then, face to face, Shuzenji told Sora what was happening. He wasn't an Ezra, but his eyes could see divine power. Because of that, he could use a forbidden technique to seal a god. What's more, although Sora's divine power shared the same nature, his strength far surpassed that of any god. Shuzenji admitted he had no idea how Sora had obtained such power, but there was no time to investigate. Several massive divine powers were already gathering within the city. Most likely, they were all searching for Sora's power. Hearing this, Sora was shocked. Shuzenji continued, saying he didn't know what exactly had happened between Sora and that god. But what he told him was the truth. No matter what, Sora must not return to the abyss. The towers held threats far more troublesome than the Ezra. That thing had only tried to trick him into going back so it could steal his divine power. What Sora needed to do now, Shuzenji said, was leave this place and enlist in the military. The suggestion left Sora conflicted. Was he really supposed to join the same people who had once tried to blow him up? Shuzenji chuckled softly, admitting the military might indeed be like that. But there was at least one person Sora could trust, someone who understood the Ezra. If Sora officially joined the military, the Ezra wouldn't dare touch him. Even so, Sora asked, what about his parents' safety? Shuzenji explained that the Ezra followed an unspoken rule never to involve civilians. That was why the United Guild had been allowed to exist this long, and above all else, with Shuzenji himself present, the Ezra would not act recklessly, for the power of a Reikan was equal to that of the Ezra. Meanwhile, at the Tiger's Roar Guild, several figures had gathered. They were none other than the Ezras themselves. Hiro Ryusei, the Ezra of Earth, scoffed and asked their leader why such a meaningless mission required sending 4 Ezra just to deal with some kid who didn't even have a system. But another interrupted, explaining that according to reports, the son of Sakuya Mukujima had been missing for years, likely because he had entered one of the towers. If that's the case, the man said, sending you alone should be more than enough to crush trash like him. The one who said this was Shiraya Yukinoju, the Ezra of Hades. His words irritated Hiro. How dare Yukinoju compare him to someone without a system? Just as he was about to lash out, Duju Rim, the Ezra of Athena, stopped him. Grinding his teeth, Hiro swallowed his anger. At that moment, Muhai Licht, leader of Tiger's Roar, addressed his 4 powerful subordinates. This time, he said, he himself would join the operation. Hearing those words, Iwagaya Haichi, the Ezra of Hermes, was utterly shocked. Was their boss really going to act personally? Muhai Licht replied that this was a direct order from Zeus himself. The delinquent known as Sora Mukujima had to be eliminated immediately. What's more, the 16th tower near Shelter 6 was about to activate. If their group could seize control of it, the tower would prove extremely valuable. And since the United Guild had already rejected their proposal, that meant they intended to move on their own. That was why this operation wouldn't just target Sora Mukujima. His parents, the ones who founded the United Guild, would also be marked. Licht planned to wipe them all out in one decisive strike. After all, he himself was an Ezra under Zeus. Back at the United Guild, Shuzenji advised Sora to head to the Central Command and meet Mie Tonosaki, one of his trusted allies. He was confident that Mie would be able to protect Sora. At the same time, Shuzenji asked Sora's mother to recheck the placement of her curse formation. If it was set correctly, even Tiger's Roar wouldn't be able to break through it. Sora's mother nodded in understanding and reassured her son. Don't worry. Even if Tiger's Roar attacks, they won't be able to breach our defenses. She added that there was a very good reason why the United Guild had chosen this place as their base. With his role clear, Sora left the guild headquarters, preparing to carry out his part. 15 minutes later, Shuzenji stood guard at the front gate. When the wind shifted, he instantly sensed it. The enemy had arrived. As the main gate swung open, a powerful surge of energy shot toward him. Reacting immediately, Shuzenji activated his defensive skill. The opening strike from the Ezra unleashed a shockwave that rippled through the United Guild members who had prepared for battle. To Shuzenji's surprise, 4 Ezra had come together to attack. Their presence was far beyond what he had anticipated. And then, from among them, a figure stepped forward. Muhai Licht. The sight of him made Shuzenji uneasy. He had never expected Licht himself to show up. Licht immediately ordered Yukinoju to move. Obeying, Yukinoju unleashed the dark power of Hades. Evil spirits flooded the United Guild headquarters, filling it with malevolent energy. Realizing this, Sakuya knew there was no other choice left but to fight. With his search eye skill, Sakuya quickly compared the levels of the two sides. The gap was enormous. Shuzenji called out to Licht's group, demanding to know what business they had, barging in at midnight. But before Licht could answer, Yukinoju spoke. According to the evil spirits, the one they were searching for wasn't here. Licht turned to Shuzenji, asking where he was hiding. Shuzenji, however, responded with a question of his own. Who exactly was Licht looking for? Hiro bristled at Shuzenji's attitude. What's with this act? He snapped. But Shuzenji only mocked him, suggesting that manners must be something new to him. Infuriated, Hiro growled, calling Shuzenji a bald fool who must have grown tired of living. At the same time, Yae Mukujima, Sora's mother, activated her curse formation. The instant it flared to life, every Ezra who had invaded the United Guild headquarters was struck by its effects. Blinded by rage, Hiro immediately launched an attack on Shuzenji. "Do you really think a trash curse like this can stop Tiger's roar from crushing your guild?" he shouted, but his confidence shattered when Shuzenji effortlessly blocked his strike. "You've underestimated the United Guild," Shuzenji said coolly. "That curse you're dismissing just lowered your level by 34. Hiro's eyes widened in shock. How could his level have dropped so drastically? Shuzenji, standing tall at level 75, sneered at him. "Without your high level, you're nothing." With that, Shuzenji drove a heavy punch into Hiro, sending him flying. The curse formation had reduced the levels of Ryusei, Hiro, Muhai Leached, Shiraya, Yukinoju, Duju Rim, and Iwagaya Haichi, all of them lowered by 34 levels. Sakuya explained, "Anyone caught within the curse zone loses half the level of the caster." Their strength had plummeted. Sakuya then asked if they still intended to fight, but Leached only laughed. The threat from the United Guild seemed to amuse him. "Interesting," he said. Then he commanded Rim to take action. As Rim unleashed her technique, Leached roared at Sakuya's group. "As long as I have you in my grasp, Sora will come straight to me." Laughing madly, Leached activated the trap. In an instant, Shuzenji, Sakuya, Jiro, and Yae were dragged into the Athena arena. With the 4 core powers of the United Guild trapped, Leached sneered at them. "It's been a long time since I've had worthy opponents. This should be fun. At least I won't be bored while I wait for Sora to walk into my trap." But he had no intention of wasting time. Raising his hand, Leached gave the command to his subordinates. "Wipe out the rest of the United Guild." This video ends here, but the story isn't over yet. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part.